evening and welcome. It's Monday night. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. Darkness Radio is back on the air. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Along with me, Mally Fox and Tim Dennis. Good evening, kids.
Good evening.
Hello.
Well, let me start off the show real quickly with thanks for all the great love and support from our listeners and friends and fans on Facebook and Twitter. I was posted today. I was as I was sitting in the doctor's office. I had a strange event happen last night. And I said it was just kind of surreal as I'm sitting in the doctor's office about ready to talk to them about, I thought I was going to die, which has been an ongoing theme this year. A lot of really crap health issues. But last night about 11:30, when I woke up, my throat felt as though somebody grabbed it and clenched it. I tried to speak and all I got out was the beginning of what? And then my throat locked up and I started, and that was all that would come out. Lasted for about 45 seconds. Really, probably one of the most frightening experiences of my life. I thought I was cashing it in. I'm sitting there, and it's amazing how much you can think in 45 seconds. Because in that time, I'm running through my head, okay, my kids are all here. It's Easter. This is going to suck if I die on Easter. This is going to affect all of my kids for life. Do I run in and start giving hugs and kisses and drop dead in front of them? Is it a good idea to give them that last hug and a kiss, or is that something that's going to leave even more scarring mental issue on their brains? And then I start flashing back to episodes of MASH, and I'm like, all right, how do I give myself a tracheotomy? In that one episode, right, where do I get myself a ballpoint pen, jam it through my throat, and open it up? Just a bizarre deal. Eventually, after I calmed down, the throat relaxed, and I took some Benadryl and some ibuprofen. Everything went fine, and I ended up kind of going back to sleep for the night. Went into the doctor today, and strangest little thing, man, your body works just so weird, right? So it breaks down to this, that basically I had a spasm or a seizure of my vocal cords, and because they're at the top of the throat, that gave the clenching feeling. And I've had allergies, so I've got postnasal drip, so that gave it that gummy kind of crappy feel in the back of my throat. And, being under stress and living the life that we lead and on the road and tired and fatigued, it's just everything all at once came together as a perfect storm. So for that 45 seconds, that was it. I was ready to cash out. So, kind of a weird deal, but I'm fine. Thank you. I'm on allergy meds now. Going to get taken care of. Everything will work out good. Nothing to be concerned of. She said this, happened. She goes, you got to remember, Dave, men don't talk a lot on general. And she says,
she hasn't met you, has she?
She goes, you're in a day job that you talk all day in sales. Then you've got kids at home you're talking to. Then you come into the radio station, you do a radio show all night where you're talking. You do live events where you're talking and hosting. And she goes, you probably put more stress and pressure on your vocal cords than most people do in a lifetime in just the 44 years you've been using them. So that was the end of it.
And you're belting out 80s tunes.
Yes. So that very well could be it.
That was it.
The curse of Wham.
Yeah.
Wham.
It was. That's totally what it was.
And Dead or Alive.
Cords. By the way, if you missed Friday night's newscast, it will be up today. We were working. We're going to have that back up on the site and posted, right, Tim?
Sure.
It was fun.
Sure. We had a lot of fun on Friday night. Got a little goofy, a little singing, a little dancing.
Rumor has it Mally giggled throughout the entire weekend, all the way until about 20 minutes ago.
Yes, pretty much. But guys loved it.
I guess.
I'm not the one that snorted.
And by the way, I'm going to be on Dr. Barry Taft's radio show on Wednesday night, just before we go on live Darkness Radio. So I'll be posting out how you can listen to that on our radio or, on the internet on Wednesday night. But Dr. Barry Taft, one of the legends in the field, one of the guys that inspired me to want to do a radio show. I remember sitting in my car listening to him talk to Art Bell and tell his story about the hauntings that he'd worked on. It just freaked me out. So now I get to do his show. How cool is that, huh? So that's what's going on. A couple of quick things I want to mention here. We do a lot of prayer and healing requests, and I just got an onslaught of them, and they're very short. I want to mention some of these, but we always like to show an update too. And this morning I was reached out by a friend of ours, Christina Wright, who's been to a bunch of our events as a listener of the show. Her baby girl, Lonnie, is dealing with cellulitis and bacterial infection. She was dealing with temperatures of 104 and 105. She was headed to Children's Hospital in Cincinnati for surgery this morning. And we put up a prayer and healing request on Facebook and on Twitter. And I'm very happy to report that about 19 minutes ago, I got an update from Christina. She said Lonnie's surgery went great. She's doing much better. She hasn't had any more fevers. hoping this healing process continues as well as it is so far. She'll be in the hospital for another couple of days. Thank you all for your well wishes and prayers. Please keep them coming. So again, please keep little Lonnie in your purse. She's only 6 months old.
Oh, little baby.
Yeah, and just dealing with a really nasty infection and ugliness. So keep her in your prayers and healing, and hopefully we'll be able to get her feeling better real soon. Here's an email from Friday. Dear Dave, I'm writing to ask for a prayer request for my dad, Don E. of New Hope, Minnesota. The other day, we got word that he had a spot on his lung is cancer. I'm asking the Darkness Radio audience to send prayers and healings to him. Thank you for this offering of kind help to those in need. I'm a great fan of your show and listen via podcast all the time. And that's from Marcia. And she's asking for help again for her father, Don E. in New Hope, Minnesota. A couple more quick ones, and then we will get started because we got an interesting show tonight. But I feel we got to get prayers and healing out of the way here, especially with the Devil's Tone coming up. Dear Dave and Tim and Mally, my son suffered a broken nose and concussion on Friday night. He is in a lot of pain. Could you please ask for prayers and healings for him? His name is Czar Young, and he is a Navy corpsman stationed at an Air Force base in Charleston, South Carolina. He has been given a couple days off to rest, but he has a headache so bad not even pain meds are helping. He is also having some trouble remembering things, and his thoughts are kind of fuzzy. Thank you so much for helping him, Mia. So again, if you could keep Navy corpsman stationed at Air Force base in Charleston, South Carolina. His name is Czar Young. And keep in your prayers and healing requests as well. We would deeply appreciate it. Got one more here we will throw out there. This one comes from Down Under, Tim.
What?
It says here, good day. Just wondering if I can ask for a prayer and healing request for my close friend's father, who suffered a heart attack a few weeks back and now needs open heart surgery. His name is Russell White and is having surgery on Tuesday night at Prince Charles Hospital in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. This man needs your help for a full recovery, and he is walking his daughter down the aisle in 5 months' time. He is 61 years old. So please keep Russell White at Prince Charles Hospital in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia in your prayers and thoughts. And it's about that time for him already tomorrow, because Australia's in the future. I don't know if you know that.
It is, yes.
They're almost a day in the future. So he's probably going in for surgery right now.
Could be.
Please keep Russell White and his family in your prayers for a quick and speedy recovery. All right, we've got that underway. Got an interesting show here. Now, we've talked about a lot of different topics on the show over the last couple of years, and this one is new to me. I was at the Gettysburg event a few weeks back, and a gentleman approached me and started telling me his story, and I said, wow, this is intriguing. This is something I've never heard of before. Would you like to come on the show? And he said, yeah, I'd love to. He was sharing his story and shared a little bit about his interaction, and also the fact that he contacted a good friend of ours, Chris Fleming, about the same situation. And Chris is going to join us a little bit later in the show to share his story and some evidence of what happened to him. Now, this is something different. I mean, we've heard about opening portals with things like Ouija boards or dowsing or, pendulums, scrying, doing different ceremonial deals to try to open up these portals. But who knew that something musical could possibly open up the gateway to negative energy and possible possession and paranormal activity? Well, our guest this evening is Matt, and I hope I pronounce this right, Kazee, and he's joining us this evening to talk to us about the Devil's Tone. And this is an intriguing story, and it's got a strange history. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Darkness on the Edge of Town, Mr. Matt Kazee. Good evening, Matt.
Thank you very much, Dave. I'm really honored to be on the broadcast. I'm a big fan of the show, so this is kind of a thrill for me.
Well, thank you very much. Now, let's talk a little bit about this story. Now, how did you? I know this starts with you dabbling and messing into this by accident and then finding out more about it later. So let's talk about how you found this Devil's Tone or the Shepherd's Tone and what happened in your life when this actually occurred.
Okay. Honestly, well, first I want to tell you this. You spoke about the losing your breath basically while you were asleep. The same thing happened to me 2 weeks ago. I woke up and couldn't breathe. And, I had that 45-second run around. I actually ran outside of the house into the yard and was thinking, they're going to find me out here in the yard. And so I have been through that before, and so it was
so this happened to you 2 weeks ago, just after I saw you, so that means you gave this to me? Thanks a lot, Matt. Thanks a lot.
You wore those bunny ears that night, and I guess you had it come in.
So, I'm glad you made it through that too. Yeah, scary stuff, isn't it?
It is, and it is amazing how much I had this kind of moment of clarity where I was thinking about so much, and like a calm inside the storm, going over all, could this be the last moments of my life? So that is a scary thing. I'm glad to hear that you have recovered from that, and hopefully it won't happen again.
Yes, no doubt. Well, now talking about happening, I mean, this is an intriguing deal, and automatically, I gotta be honest with you. When you start telling a story like you're about to share, the BS meters start flying off the shelf for me, and
I understand that.
and it because it just sounds like, and even posting today, I can't even tell you, I've had probably about 15 emails from people going, Dave, come on. There's no possible way a sound can actually create this. Well, if we believe that vibrational tonality can have a influence on a location or an energy, and we know that playing music sometimes at haunted locations works as a trigger object, I guess why wouldn't we, if the right blend of music can shatter a glass, why can't the right blend of notes create some kind of temporal rift? So how did you stumble upon this, and what were you doing that you opened up this portal yourself?
Well, let's just get back to what the skeptics are saying a little bit, and believe me, I got into the paranormal.
Well, no. We'll handle the skeptics later. I want to hear the story, and then we'll talk about, how this is handled with the skeptics. And I think your story, and Chris coming on to share a little bit more in a bit, will, help to solidify the history of where this comes from. But yeah, I want to get into your story.
How did I discover the Shepherd's Stone?
Right.
And how did it affect me? This is kind of, and I'll try and, long story short here, I set out to make a documentary to say there was no such thing as ghosts. I thought all these TV shows were ridiculous, and I trekked around the country and went to these places by myself, and pretty much went from skeptic to believer after spending a little time at the Washoe Club. And right after that, Dave, actually is when I met you. I came down to Louisville at the Waverly event, was the first time I met you, and Chris Fleming. And shortly after that, the last place on my list was Trans-Allegheny. I went to Trans-Allegheny with my drummer and did some terrible provoking in a horrible way, and a shameful way is a better way to describe it. Was in the worst of the worst area, basically challenging things that I don't understand in a completely disrespectful way that I regret to this day. So when I got home, I was done with my documentary. I'd been to all these places. I was never going to ghost hunt again. I had forgotten all about it and was moving on with my life. And 1 week later, to the day that I was in Trans-Allegheny, I was here at my office, and I was playing guitar. I was having a great night, and didn't have a care in the world. Was just practicing guitar and jamming. And something very strange began to occur. Some strange paranormal event occurred while I was playing music. And the only way I can describe it is that as I started to play and was probably 30, 45 minutes in, the guitar started reacting in a way that I've never experienced before. I've played guitar for over 20 years. There's nothing the guitar could throw at me that I wouldn't understand, and this was completely phenomenal. I could not understand how this was occurring. It began to, I guess the best way to describe it is it sounded like it was playing itself. And basically it started making a sound that sounded like it was going up and down at the same time. At first this was a very low sound in the background and gradually got louder, like almost like a feedback. Then some very weird things started to occur where I would be playing notes. I would push a note and try and play it, and there would be no sound at all, completely dead notes. And then a second later, you would hear a subtone that was a completely different note sound off. And so I kept playing, and this kept getting louder and louder and louder until eventually, one by one, my guitar strings pulled all the way down and touched the magnet for a second and just stayed there for about a second and then popped back up. The next string would go down and then it would pop back up.
And you're just watching this happen in front of you?
Yes.
So it's almost like like invisible fingers are working the
that's
strings.
That's exactly the way it was.
Okay.
It was eerie. It was startling, but I was so amazed, and I've been around music for so long, there was never any fear of anything that was going on. And so after the strings, touched the magnets, it continued to sound like it was playing itself, and I began to notice a static electricity that first was from the ground up, coming up my legs, then from the top of my head going down and meeting in the middle. And as this happened, my dogs began to freak out. They both came into the room. Their hair was standing on end. All of my hair was standing on end.
Show off.
And this it was really bizarre. This static electricity was just, you could smell the ozone in the air, literally. My dogs start barking and trying to get me to stop, and for whatever reason, I didn't. I was so amazed by what was occurring that, I literally said out loud, I'm not afraid of this. I'm not going to stop. This is just music. It can't, there's, nothing bad could come from it. So I continued, and it got to the point where...
Did you learn nothing from Footloose? Bad can always happen from music.
Well, see, now we're getting back to the Devil's Tone and why they call it that. So anyways, one of my dogs ran out of the room. The other dog, with her hair all standing up, literally walked out of the room backwards with her butt in the air and was yelping like, I've never heard a dog make a sound like that. Mm-hmm. And at this point is when I began to get scared. Obviously, if something is affecting my dogs like that, I could feel this static electricity. And I kept going a little further until what can only be described as some type of channeling occurred. It was a horrifying experience for me. From a skeptic to being an experience, to going through an experience that could only be described as channeling was pretty horrifying. It was something that I'll never forget. Some really bizarre, unique things happened right after that. And pretty much for the next 3 months, I was haunted. Now, here's what's the most interesting part for me. Paranormal activity would actually occur when I would play electric guitar here at the office. I started cataloging this stuff on tape a week later, and for, I would say, about 3 weeks, it was really intense. Some of the most amazing evidence I've ever captured anywhere happened in my office in a place that wasn't haunted.
Now, when you say that, in what sense? Was it...
Let's see, the short list. Bangs on the wall, knocks on the wall. Let's see, what else? I've got on tape something blowing in my ear. I could feel it in my ear, and I could barely hear it, but when I play back the tape, you can hear it blowing in my ear. My dogs would get so freaked out and would run to a certain part of the office and start barking and growling at something that wasn't there. I captured on tape while I was playing guitar the K2 meter going off right as a light anomaly, or what people may refer to as an orb, came down from the ceiling and flew over and into the end of my cigarette before I lit it and inhaled it. What else? It just goes on.
Wait, so you saw something fly into your cigarette and then you decided to light it and inhale it?
Of course I didn't see it. I didn't see it until I watched the tape.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. I didn't realize you were videotaping and so.
I was completely unaware of that at the time. Obviously, that is the reason why we should all quit smoking. But I began to be haunted, and not only that, some amazing synchronicities occurred at an alarming rate, to the point where every weekend something wilder would happen. My dogs were attacked. I saw a full-bodied apparition walking down the alley behind me under a streetlight that was absolutely holographic in nature. And, some amazing things just blew my mind.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, those are pretty amazing and pretty cool activity. I mean, that's kind of the holy grail for paranormal investigators. But
well, maybe for a paranormal investigator, but I was a skeptic who didn't want to believe that there was anything else out there. So for somebody like me, it's horrifying experience to some degree. Now, I will say this, Dave. There was a point where I was frightened by the whole thing, but after these other things kept occurring, highly intelligent things, like I would hear bangs on my door out back. Nobody would be there. So I set up a camera and let it run for 2 hours. I didn't hear it again. I went up, and as soon as I shut off the camera, bang, bang, bang on the door. I opened the door, nobody was there. Obviously, whatever it was knew that I was trying to capture evidence, and it was letting me know that it wasn't going to play like that, or that it knew what I was up to. It was amazing stuff.
There's a difference, and I know you understand this. There's a difference between being afraid because it's shocking and it took you by surprise, and being afraid because you get a sense of just pure evil involved. Which way did you fall down?
Heard during the channeling was the only time where I had the sense that, this was bad. And I also felt after that, that night, I would say I was full of terror. The weeks after that, it was more of a fascinating thing, and it was more like you described as the Holy Grail. I was amazed that I was actually capturing some of this evidence. The most amazing thing to me was that it was occurring at a place that wasn't haunted. This gives credence to the whole idea of something following you from a location. I mean, I can remember my drummer, who was there with me provoking, saying to me, nothing's going to follow me home, is it? And I was just laughing at it like, that's impossible. Trust me, nothing's going to follow you home.
Now, are you sure that it was something from there that followed you home, or was it perhaps...
All I know is it was 1 week to the day I was in Allegheny to the hour when this occurred. So...
Right, but do you think that it had something to do more with the music that you were messing with, and you were playing these chords?
Here's the thing, Dave. I was just playing normal stuff. I wasn't trying to play the Shepherd's Tone in any way, shape, or form. At that moment, I hadn't even heard of it. I was just playing normal guitar, like my arrangements, like I always do, and something like a foreign object got thrown in the middle of it. So I tend to believe, and this could just be, me thinking this, but I tend to believe that it did have something to do with what I did up at Allegheny, and I was basically paying for it.
Well, can you... we're going to have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have Chris Fleming on line too. But before we talk to Chris, can you explain to us how you took from the notes that you got to find out that this is something called the Shepherd's Tone or the Devil's Tone?
Yes, absolutely.
And we'll cover that when we come back out of the break, and then we'll go into Chris Fleming and have him share his story, because you actually reached out to Chris wondering and seeking some guidance, and we're a little surprised to find that he had shared a very similar experience. And we're going to get to hear about that as well. Stay tuned. More of the best in Paranormal Talk Radio continues in just moments. Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show, heard here 5 nights a week, Monday through Friday, from 11 p.m. till midnight on the Twin Cities News Talk Station, AM 1130 and 103.5 FM.
I found it. It's the true Devil's Tone, Dave.
This truly is.
This is, yeah.
If it's not, it should be.
I feel like I should be having a martini right now.
Really?
This is actually music to watch Mally by.
Oh, is that what is this? Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass Band?
Bob Crew Generation.
Oh, yeah. Herb Alpert was much better.
Yeah, it was.
Wasn't he the Girls to Watch Music to Watch Girls Go By?
Yeah, well, that's what this song is here.
Oh.
It's the Bob Crew version.
Mally, from this point forward, I never want to hear him complain about our music choices for bumper music.
I'm just saying it's the Devil's Tone, Dave.
There is something to that. Speaking of the Devil's Tone, our guest this evening is Matt Kazee, and we're talking to him about the Devil's Tone and his work. During the commercial break, Matt, welcome back to the show. I did have a caller call in. Do you have a website where you've got any of your evidence from your experiences posted? Any of the weird stuff that's happened to you, the audio or the video?
This is all going to be featured in a documentary that will air on the Paranormal Reality channel on Roku.
Okay.
You can check it out at paranormalreality.tv is the website. We got the Kling brothers actually getting ready to start a show on our network, so we're pretty excited about that.
Who? I'm just kidding.
I don't have it posted yet. It's going to be, in the documentary, but I don't have any of it posted online. I can send you some though, Dave.
Well, no, I mean, I certainly don't want to. I'll wait till everybody else sees it. It's not fair that I see it. Send it to my personal email address at David Darkness Radio. But the documentary will be coming out, and when would that be hitting? Do you think?
It'll be sometime soon. It's basically we're doing a series that covers this whole situation that I got in and my reaction to it and just the investigation in general of trying to find proof of the other side. A little history about the Shepherd's Stone, or people do call it the Devil's Stone. It's also referred to as the Devil's Staircase. There are two versions. I mean, what we know of the Shepherd's Stone is a modern situation. The ancient version was basically discovered by a guy named Guido of Arezzo, who is the guy who came up with musical notation and also the guy who came up with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Anyway, it became something that the church frowned upon because of something that they didn't like, which was dissonance. So the tritone is what people really refer to as the Devil's Stone. Now, was it actually banned by the Catholic Church, the tritone itself, or the Shepherd's Stone? It's much wider than that. It was dissonance that was actually banned by the Catholic Church in music. They did not like anything that they didn't consider harmony. So if you played any scary music or dissonance, which is the tritone, or Shepherd's Stone, which is a kind of rising or lowering sound at the same time, they didn't like the effects that it had on people. Now, they honestly knew how powerful music was, like you mentioned at the start of the show, that you can break a wine glass with your voice. Not only that, they are studying today that they have frequencies that they can play to people, and certain people, as soon as they hear the frequency, will burst out laughing, or others will, if they play a different frequency.
That was obvious on Friday when I was singing 80s songs. Mally couldn't stop giggling.
It was awesome.
I hit all of those notes, and I think the Catholic Church is trying to ban me now. So, but did they end up banning this deal because they felt that it brought on possession, or that it brought on fits of strange?
So here's the thing: they felt that if you played dissonance, that it catered to evil. Of course, the church is always looking for some new devil to blame all of our problems for, but primarily they didn't like the way that certain music affected people. Now, it is rumored that through other researchers that there was paranormal activity that occurred during some of these early times. Now, that's exactly where music came from, is basically a form of communicating with the spirits. And so the monks would start to do these chants, and this tone, these similar tones would show up, and it caused a big problem for the church. Now, you're not going to find in writing exactly what that problem was, but it has been rumored for quite some time that it created, evil behavior. Personally, I'm a musician. The whole concept of music being evil, or there being, a musical note that is of the devil, to me is ridiculous. That being said, we're using sound in ways now that nobody would have ever imagined. They have actually created generators that work from sounds. They are able to use sounds as weapons. This is, there's no doubt that sound waves are what we're all made of, and everything has a resonance that is based off of the earth resonance, the Schumann resonance.
This seems so strange to me, though, that, I mean, you talk about these musical notes, and this stuff happened, and you felt that this evil channeled through you, and that amped up paranormal activity. Yet in this breath, you almost sound like you're discounting the possibility of that occurring.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. So is the music itself evil? I have a hard time believing that. I do know for a fact that there was this similar sound to the Shepherd's Stone, and let me tell you how I found that. Through a synchronicity, somebody literally a couple of days later was at a music class where they were discussing how music directly affects people and can certain tones can make people angry, certain tones can make people cry. And one of the studies that they were working on was the shepherd's tone. So she sent it to me, and as soon as I listened to it, I instantly felt like that had something to do with it. So I did reach out. I was confused. I didn't know what was going on.
Sure.
I was being haunted. I reached out to a whole bunch of people. I just interviewed Ghost Adventures down at your Waverly event, and so I emailed them and heard back from Nick and got some support there, and also emailed you, Dave. You gave me some good advice as well, and emailed Chris Fleming. Chris Fleming looked at the email and basically played the sound and emailed me back saying that he had far too many coincidences that had just occurred in his life for him to discount my story. When you tell somebody, especially in the field, your paranormal accounts, like you said earlier, the red flags go up, and it's like, oh, gosh, here comes another person telling me their haunted story. So to get an email like that from Chris really meant a lot to me because, I was concerned that nobody would believe what happened.
Well, we've got Chris Fleming on the line, our friend, a psychic sensitive, star of Dead Famous and Psychic Kids, Children of the Paranormal. Chris Fleming is on the line with us now. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, so let me hear this from your version. Matt reaches out to you in an email and starts sharing his story to you. And you said that the synchronicities and things just kind of lined up too close for you to just discount this. And you and I, we hear a lot of stories and a lot of weird people's views on the paranormal and this and that. And everybody always jumps to the conclusion that, it's something evil. What was your initial thought when Matt wrote to you and started to share this experience?
Well, first he had written to me a couple times, and I didn't really pay too much attention to it because I get emails all the time, people kind of being a little exaggerating about this or that, and I'm like, here we go, another one. And I just happened to be at that moment at my computer when another email message popped up from him talking about some type of tone, and there was a link, said he had found the link. And I go, oh, what the heck, I'll listen to it. So right there, as soon as it popped up, I went in and I listened to the tone, which is some type of tritone using the shepherd tone, and they had a little MP3 file on there that you could listen to. So I listened to it, and then I stopped it halfway because I started feeling something. I'm like, wait a minute, this is kind of freaking me out here. So I rewound it, and I played it again. The thing is as a medium, I'm able to channel. And what I felt was this started inducing that certain form of channeling that I go through. Now I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I started going through these contortions and everything as if my spirit and soul was being pushed or in some ways ripped out of my body. Very similar to when you're doing channeling, you kind of leave your body when the other spirit comes in. But this was kind of forcing me to be pushed out. So stupid me gets up, closes my door, puts headphones on because now I'm really impressed by what this is causing to happen to me. I lean back and I start to do it. And I started to kind of leave my body slightly to a point where I said, you know what, I don't know what's going to happen when I'm out of this. So I kind of stopped it. And I sat there kind of perplexed, like, I can't believe this is inducing this. And I started reading everything about it. Just at that moment, I heard this scream in the hallway. And I jumped up. I hadn't heard that scream ever before in real time. I had captured in June 5th in 2010, which was prior to that, an EVP of the same exact scream, but I'd never heard it in real time. Well, my cat got up, went towards the door. I opened up the door. He goes out of the hallway, takes a right to where it came from, and stops, stands there sniffing, and all of a sudden his tail shoots up, and he goes and runs and hides underneath the kitchen table. I said, oh, my God, you heard that too. So I walk out there, and as soon as I took the corner, as a sensitive, I could totally feel the energy was different right in that hallway where the scream emanated from. All my hairs were standing on end, and I'm like, oh, my God. So my girlfriend at the time, I yelled for her. I said, did you hear this? She goes, what? I go, did you hear the scream? She didn't hear it at all. So I broke out my RT EVP, put the headphones on, and went through the house, and I got some other responses from the ghosts that were in my house that have always been in my house. But for me, it was like, okay, did the scream, they did not like the fact that I was playing this tone? I don't know. But I couldn't get this out of my head. So I ended up calling up Adam Bly, And I said...
and Adam Bly, for our listeners that don't know, Adam Bly is a demonologist that works with the Roman Catholic Church in helping to differentiate between people that are having issues and real cases of possession and demonic attachment. And he works in hand with the Catholic Church to help assess these situations and assist in exorcisms.
That is correct, Dave. And because I felt there was more of a negative attachment to this thing of what I was feeling, I called him up and I asked him if he had heard about this, and he said he had. Not the exact description of it. He's heard the Devil's Tone, and he even reiterated to a fact that it had been banned by the Catholic Church. He said he had done some research when he was at Penn State, where they did some research where it affects the brain to some degree, where they noticed changes in I can't remember the exact terminology he was using. He told me, Chris, do not play it. He goes, do not play it. As sensitive as you are, it could affect you. And I said, well, obviously, I'm not going to play it again after I felt. Well, as time went on, I started going through what one would call the early stages of possession. And in those early stages of possession, I was speaking in my sleep. I was all of a sudden becoming paralyzed slightly and then spouting words out, which would be sometimes the early stages of even channeling when I would allow something to come through, as if they were trying to go in, trying to go out. And I noticed that, but I would have no control. I mean, I would just be sitting there watching TV, and all of a sudden I'd freeze up, and they'd start screaming through me. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? I now have no control over channeling. It's just happening out of the blue. So it got to a point, which I won't go into because it's a whole other topic, where I had to have Adam come to my house and do some things. I do believe that there was other things going on at the time that were involved, but I don't believe it was a coincidence that all of a sudden these things just happened. I think this was another nail in the coffin that allowed these things to come through. And I honestly will never play this again unless the only time I would play it is if I was in a scientific lab with Adam and with other people that were going to do tests on my brain, as well as be able to document what is happening to me. I would never do this on my own again. There's just no way.
Right, and I know, Matt, you sent me a link that has the Shepherd's Tone on it, an MP3 of the Shepherd's Tone, and we won't be playing that on the air tonight, folks. I just don't think it's responsible of me to put it out over the broadcast airwaves here in Minneapolis and St. Paul and have people start possibly opening portals in their cars or later at work when you're listening to it on the podcast. But now you've got a piece of audio here, Chris, of one of the screams you actually captured. Is that right?
Yeah, the thing we want to illustrate here is this is not that exact moment when both my cat and I heard this in the hallway. However, this is the exact sound of that scream that, ironically, I had caught before on an EVP. I don't know how many months before it was, or a year before, whatever. I don't know the exact. But it was identical. That made me stand up going, oh, my God, that's the same scream, which means it was the same entity that's in my house. So, that's the file that I sent you so people can hear exactly what I had heard. Now, keep in mind, this audio clip, there are bangs. There are bangs, bang before the two screams and then two bangs afterwards. I didn't hear any bangs. Those were caught on the EVP, which we do know sometimes we get clicks and we get bangs.
Right, like something's trying to come through. All right, so this is audio of a separate time that you were collecting EVP, and you actually captured the scream that you again heard after you messed with this Shepherd or Devil's Tone. Go ahead, Tim.
It was prior to me messing with it, yes.
Okay. Now, are those actual bangs, Chris, or does it sound? It almost sounds like an animalistic growl or a snarl.
It's creepy.
Yeah,
you know what it sounds like to me?
What's that?
It sounds like the same bangs that you hear in the Shepherd's Tone. As it's rising, it's got a point where it loops, and you hear a very similar sound to that exact bang.
Why don't play it one more time, Tim? Boy, it's almost like the banshee's scream. I mean, that's a really chilling type of noise.
We call it the banshee scream, exactly.
All right. Interesting stuff. Thanks a lot for coming on and sharing your story with us tonight, Chris. We appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, guys. And please don't play this tone.
No, we won't. And go check out Chris Fleming. You can check out his website at spirittalk.planetparanormal.com and hear his new episode of Spirit Talk where he interviews Aaron Goodwin. They have a good time, funny stuff, and get deep into some of his stuff. So go check it out at spirittalk.planetparanormal.com, or you can go check out my Facebook page, and Chris has posted it there on my page as well. We'll come back, and we've got more with Matt Kazee right after this on the best in paranormal talk radio. Darkness Radio continues in mere moments on the Twin Cities News Talk Station, AM 1130 and 103.5 FM.
Listen to the best of paranormal talk radio with Darkness Radio from 11 to midnight and Coast to Coast AM from midnight to 4 a.m. on the Twin Cities News Talk Station, AM 1130.
Something's wrong 'cause my mind is fading. And everywhere I look, there's a dead end waiting. Temperatures dropping at the rotten oasis, stealing kisses from the leprous faces.
Good evening. Welcome back to the show. This is Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio. Stay tuned. George Norrie and Coast to Coast is next. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Mally Fox, Tim Dennis. Our guest this evening, Matt Kazee, and we're talking about the devil's tone or the shepherd's tone, eerie sound that has been known to shepherd in paranormal activity. You know what would be interesting is taking the shepherd's tone and running it through an ES speaker, which is an energy speaker available through ghostshop.com. One of our sponsors with Bill Chappell. And, you know, that actually plays the music back in a magnetic resonance so that you can't hear it physically, Matt, but you can actually, it'll play it back in that same magnetic frequency that we collect EVPs. And it'd be interesting.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Dave, because we're getting ready to plan to do that, this time with a much bigger speaker than just the mini speaker. And we want to do that very thing. I contemplated, using earplugs for investigators, because here's the question, is it something that directly affects nature, or is it something that affects some psychic energy within all human beings?
Sure.
That causes the reaction? We're just not really sure. And I like your idea because, playing it through the electromagnetic speaker, in theory, would keep a listener from having to experience anything negative from it, hopefully.
Hopefully, but yeah, but that's something you have to ask too morally. I mean, where are you going to do this? Are you going to do it in somebody else's location where you may now be opening up the seventh portal of hell and creating all kinds of havoc after you leave? Or do you do this at some location that's not known to be haunted to see if this does, help shepherd in a different, pardon the pun, rift and start to allow things to occur there. You see, I do believe that there is quite a bit of magic in music. It works great for memory. It works great for different purposes. And we've had amazing EVP and amazing interaction when we've used music as a trigger object at locations.
Right.
But using something like this that may actually impact you. Now, it's interesting that Chris was talking about the tones and how he was kind of leaving his body. I remember an experiment with some of the science nerds from my high school that were trying to induce astral projection. And I had no feeling on it one way or another, so they'd asked me if I'd be willing to do this test. So literally I was laid out in a sterile room environment where there was nothing else in the room, and they had headphones on. They had queued this deal up, so all I would hear are these tones that kept changing. And I laid there for what felt like about 5-10 minutes, and they came back in, and they're like, "Did you notice anything?" I said, "No, not really. Did you feel like you leave your body?" I said, "No, I didn't really feel anything. I didn't feel like it was inducing astral projection. It was just 10 minutes of kind of tones." And they all looked at each other and they said, "What do you mean 10 minutes worth of tones?" I said, "Well, it was just like this, ooh, ooh, just kept doing all these weird tones." And he said, "Dave, you've been out for about an hour and a half." And I said,
wow.
That's ridiculous. It's no more than 10 minutes I was laying here, and I was conscious through it all. And sure enough, Every clock in the house was set that way. And then I thought, okay, somebody's trying to play a joke on me as I'm laying down with my eyes closed. They'll change the clocks and were messing with me. I left and went home, and sure enough, it was, almost 2 hours after I had gone over there and had this experiment done. And it was a 10-minute window. I have no recollection of anything happening to me, of anything entering my body. But, I don't know that, we can't change our parameters with tonality and changing the vibrational pole of these areas. It's interesting, and I'm intrigued to see. Are you continuing your experiments with this? Will that be part of the documentary as well when you bombard the magnetic field?
We have already done that in locations. I will say this, I don't want to give everything away, but we did it at Bobby Mackey's. We also did some experiments in other locations and I will say this, there is some type of fear cage that does arise from the sound itself.
Uh-huh.
So there was always a little moment of panic whenever it was played.
But do you feel that you're taking it to places like this and then you leave? I mean, you obviously don't have the method to close things down.
Well, here's the other thing that we found that
uh-huh.
I'm not really sure if the shepherd's tone itself is the catalyst for all of this, or if it is a side effect of all of this. It's hard to describe, but you have to remember when this occurred for me, I was playing normal guitar, and then suddenly the guitar started doing that on its own. So is it something like the shadow of something that has passed through that creates this type of sound, or lives within that vibrational frequency? I'm not really sure. We definitely protected ourselves the whole way through it, and we were quite professional when we attempted to do experiments with it.
Well, I'm not even talking about you so much, but if you're opening up these riffs in locations and then leaving, is that responsible for the locations to leave them in that kind of area without knowing how to seal it?
Speak with the location, Bobby Mackey's, about that, and it was cleared.
Okay. Have you done any work with reversing the tones? Have you ever done it where you've played it backwards to see if there's any kind of different effect? Or
I have. We tried both of those. We had forwards, backwards, and then going all the way up and then playing it reverse. We tried all three of those modes.
All right. And did you notice that there was...
Thing, Dave.
Was there any more activity that came with one? Hold on, Matt. I'm running the show. Was there any more activity that took place in any one of those experiments when you were doing it? Was it forward, backwards, upside down? I mean, was there anything that you noticed that correlated either way with that, or was it just...
I would say no. It seemed to be more or less when it was playing normally.
Just when it played normally. Okay, because again, I don't know how that's gonna, how that would play down, but I would affect if it's a certain way the tonality is played. If you mess with that, it might not have the same key or resonance to open up these portals. And understand too, I'm not trying to put you on the block when I'm asking what the responsibility is. I just know our listeners will hit me up with this over the next 3 days while listening on the podcasts with their theories of, well, what happens if you're opening the stuff up and leave it? Is there any way to close this down, maybe using vibration or playing it backwards at the end to try to reseal it? So I'm just curious if, you had experimented with any of that. Were there any complaints from these locations after you left that things seemed amped up, or did they just seem to go back to normal?
Everything went back to normal.
Intriguing. All right. Very cool. Well, Matt, again, how can people find more information about you and about the work you're doing?
Paranormalreality.tv as far as the work that I do in the paranormal world. I have a series of, they're basically mini documentaries, but I have a series on that network. And I just want to warn people, Dave, I know I'm kind of feeling bad because people are going to run out there and try it. So just please be careful and be respectful and don't provoke in nasty ways.
Right. And, we can only do so much. We report about these cases, talk about them. You can talk about the different ways to try to make these contacts. We always tell people it's best, apparently, not to mess with this. If people are saying that it's a bad deal, we can't, unfortunately, hold their hand and make sure that they don't do it. But thank you very much for coming on, Matt, and sharing your cautionary tale about the activity that you had. And we're looking forward to seeing the documentary when it comes out. Will you come back and talk to us about it?
Absolutely. Anytime.
All right. Thank you,
Dave.
Matt. Appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. Got an interesting week ahead of us. Stay tuned. We're going to be talking about Children of the Paranormal with Megan Warfield and her mom, Stacy White, and that'll be taking place on Wednesday. Our good friend, Mark Anthony, the psychic attorney, will be back on Thursday, and we're going to be talking about reincarnation. And tomorrow night, we're going to be talking kind of an interesting new topic, and I hope that you guys are going to check in with us. 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 Check in with us.